Happy Wednesday and welcome to Adam versus the Man. We got a special show tonight with two guests lined up. Very excited about this. We've got an incredible cannabis activism story, and we've got the head of California Independence. Yes, California. We're going to get into some of the formalities of the organization. Interesting turn of events with the California Independence movement. How many of y'all who don't live in California would be okay if they just dropped off into the ocean? None of us compassionate Adam versus the Man people would ever say such a thing, but we're happy to apply that politically. Separatism for the sake of localization. So we got Jason Wright joining us to talk about that in just about 25 minutes. We got a few updates here. We're totally disorganized for the show tonight. As you can see, we are pointed with our cameras not towards the wood stove because I made it too hot to cook my dinner. So I get done before the show. It is so hot right now. But you know, you can watch it. You can watch it get dark. Watch the reflection in the windows there. Just had a beautiful sunset here, as it tends to often be in Gardena. And I gotta say, it's been a very mild winter. I'm really disappointed. Like, we cook with the wood stove, and it's like, God damn it, we got to open windows and doors and air out the cabin. It is too warm in here. We have passed the coldest part of the year, I'm afraid.
Feels like summer inside.
By the way, today is my last edition of Adam versus the Man as a 39-year-old. As if that shit matters. I have a lot of mixed feelings about this. I'm turning 40 on Tuesday, February 1st. And, you know, I don't do stuff for birthdays, you know, but this is like, I think what I'm doing to celebrate my birthday is having a 3-month-long midlife crisis that extends from like a month and a half before my birthday to like a month and a half after. So this is a lot of fun. By the way, it can't be a midlife crisis because I'm going to live to be 150. You know, like that was a Rob Lowe character in Parks and Recreation.
Never watched it.
Some researchers say that the first man to live to be 120 years old has been born already. You know, yeah, we're there. 150. I don't know. I'm in the best shape of my life. Okay, I'm not in the best. I was in better shape playing rugby. I'm in the best looking shape of my life because my body fat percentage is lower. But I do want to talk about something personal for the opening monologue tonight. I guess first, like, what other big teases do we have to get out? We're going to give an update on Ed Vallejo and the legal situation there. Got a little update on my Saguache County legal situation. Got a disappointing update on my New Orleans Shall ID legal case tonight. Unfortunately, finally spoke to my attorney there, Curry Laughlin. Yeah, do you remember from the pressure washing, the water sampling?
I love the news.
Right.
Maybe there's something changed.
The news is bad, but not that bad. But we'll get into that. All of that and more. But first, before we get to producer notes and serious shit, and we'll talk about some headlines. I mean, again, the COVID narrative. We said we were going to have a serious show about COVID, and you're welcome. We're not. I think I've done maybe
we did a good job of walking away from the COVID blocks.
And this is while we have COVID. We think we have COVID. Joey and I are 90+% confident that this whatever illness we're experiencing right now is COVID, because it was like a 3-phase funky flu.
Yeah, over like 2 weeks.
Yeah, it lasted 2 weeks. And now my excuse, I have a really good excuse for getting seriously sick, being as healthy as I am. Although I didn't go to the hospital with COVID. Yeah, I went to the hospital for COVID. Yeah, no. So but we had this period of like fever and chills and cold sweats, and then body aches. And I don't get that, like, ever. Like in my entire adult life, I don't get the flu's just not a thing for me. So it was a really weird experience for to be like, oh, when people say you have joint aches or like muscle aches with the flu, oh, this is what it's like. Okay. And now we're in the lingering head cold, sinus congestion phase. I don't know if you can still hear it in my voice, but I'm pretty sure we've been non-contagious for a couple of weeks, because you get that, like, when you're, I don't know, but we are symptomatic We are the dangerous ones. Yes.
I had to cancel my blood giving appointment, so it's kind of serious.
But I will say that it's we have come to this point with the COVID narrative where I'm starting to believe the less Adam versus the man talks about COVID, the less it's a problem, right? And it's kind of like, yeah, I mean, if you think about it, what is COVID? A funky off-season flu that has some genuine threat to people who are vulnerable to that sort of thing. I am more and more inclined to believe in the lab leak theory from what's like mainly from the way the mainstream media has like let Jon Stewart have his rant on Stephen Colbert and then kind of let it go. Oh yeah, we're not going to talk about it. We don't know. And we can't slander y'all for being conspiracy theorists anymore. If Jon Stewart said it, we can't cancel you. Oh yeah, you can still cancel us for it. I mean, one of the reasons we're not on YouTube anymore is we're just talking openly about COVID. And when it came to policy, talking about lockdowns not working, they've given up on lockdowns. I mean, they keep people like scared into sheltering and isolating and whatnot, but they have really kind of gotten away from the lockdowns. They've still got a lot of people scared. They've got a lot of people living, stunted versions of their lives at best. But it's really nice. I mean, I did get sick of saying "I told you so," and I'm just kind of waiting for this thing to unwind at this point. All right. Before we get to producer notes, I'm going to get personal for a few minutes, as promised. Maybe we should do producer notes first and smoke weed every day.
Wait,
ladies and gentlemen, Joey's going to get a bong. Jim, get up here. We're gonna do this, and then I'm going to do the opening monologue because it's going to be a heavy one tonight.
Smoke weed before our notes. Yeah, you're already firing it up.
You're like this mustache.
Cool. This is cool. Watch. Smoke through the stash.
Dang.
It's a smoke exhale filtration system, as well as a soup strainer and a crumb catcher. And I'm catching up with Jim on the beard length, but I realized mine's actually a little slower growing than average. Did my homework finally. The average man's beard grows half an inch per month. And I've got now 16 months on this fucker since I stopped keeping it, tight trimmed. And it's only like 4 something inches at the chin, although I've trimmed it. So it should be 8 inches. I haven't trimmed 4 inches off of it.
Everybody says it's 8 inches.
I don't know about that math, but I guess maybe my beard grows low too.
Well, you know why women are so bad at judging distance, right? Men keep telling them that this is 6 inches. Anyway, with that, Jim, do we have producer notes? What do we have tonight?
We have t.me/Adam versus the man. That's the public Telegram channel that every one of you should already be connected to. If you're not, it's free to join. Everyone's welcome. It's building quickly, so become a part of it. Know everything that's going on with the show ahead of time, when it's being scheduled, notes, everything like that. Patreon.com/Adam versus the man is where you can financially support the show. You can also become a private producers club member, which is a more elite club of people that it's like a backdoor conversation 24 hours a day, spitting ideas off people and just having a conversation with Adam and the team 24 hours a day. So it's pretty cool. Next, HomefrontBattleBuddies.org. I'm sure we'll get an update on them today, if there is one. HomefrontBattleBuddies.org. You can donate. It's theft deductible. All of your donations there. So definitely check that out. I think that's all we got.
All right. Well, I do want to say just about the Telegram group. We have a lot of fun there, and it is really the brain trust behind this show. So like when I go, oh shit, what are we going to talk about tonight? Oh, what were people sharing in the producers club? I didn't do any prep. I'm a lazy host. I didn't do my job. But yeah, the last thing that was shared in there, retribution. Whistleblower shared DoD medical data that blows vaccine safety debate wide open. I mean, the thing about all this, it's just like the I told you so's, one after another. And that's a perfect segue for my opening monologue. So get out of here, guys. This we're gonna get heavy on this. So part of my midlife crisis, my I'm 40. I'm gonna be 40. You know, I get to tell people I'm exact. I'm starting my 40. I guess it's like I want to call it my quarter life crisis because I'm gonna live closer to 160 than 80. I know that, right? Yeah. I mean, if government doesn't have anything to say about it, that is. So part of what I'm doing, you know, in looking at my life and reconsidering my relationships is, you know, coming into my own truth. It sounds pretty gay, doesn't it? I don't mean gay like homosexual. I mean like faggy, and I don't mean faggy like homosexual. I mean like an awkward bundle of sticks, like the guy, you know, that are people that are annoying, like guys with really loud motorcycles,
Like the kid on the playground.
right? Like the kid fag. I mean fag in the South Park sense. Yeah, I love that South Park gave us license to use that word again because it's such a great derogatory word. I want to be able to call a dude a fag without it implying gay people because the word fag is like an awkward. It's just such a anyway. This is not.
We
not
also
the
get to
topic.
make fun of AIDS too. Thanks.
We can make fun. Oh, we can make fun of AIDS now. It's not too soon.
Yeah.
So we can make fun of that. We can make fun of anything, right? We did anyway on the show. But one of the things that I've gone through recently is something I never thought would happen, but I basically defood. Is anybody first person in the comments to explain defood wins membership in the Producers Club? See if I can go 15 minutes without explaining that term and still talk about what I want to talk about. So get it already?
Cruel Spark, no, separate. Says on Odyssey from Cruel Spark, it's gay, but it's not bad, guys.
No, okay. Enough South Park references. We'll be here all night. So with my family, I have finally at 40 years old, and this is the sort of hard thing to admit. I'm see if I can go because I don't want to, you know, Joe. I have to talk about my family. I have to talk about my parents. I have to talk about my mom and my dad. But I don't want to, you know, and my brothers and my sister. But I think I can do this without. I really don't want to make it about them, and I don't want to like call them out publicly. Like that's not the point. I mean, it's bad enough that they got to be Adam Kokesh's family according to them. So I don't have to call any of them out by name. Well, my sister used to brag about, you know, when they would call her last name, like at school rosters, because she's more than 10 years younger than me.
Oh.
So like I was already
So
a famous activist,
still in school.
and she was in like middle school, and they go Audrey Kokesh, and then one of the other, huh? Kokesh? Wait, you mean like Adam versus the Man? That Kokesh? Yeah. And they always thought it was cool or funny or whatever, but they never really engaged with it. And I will say, but here's the heart of it. I have suffered my entire adult life with a certain kind streak deficiency of emotional immaturity. And I think this is something I've talked about publicly in the sense that as I become further distanced from my time in the Marine Corps, I am more and more capable of examining and reprogramming the ways in which I was programmed to serve authority. And you keep discovering one thing after another, after another, after another. And it's a beautiful process of discovery. Psychedelics has played a role. It's an experience of exploring inner space, right? And there's something about the experience of psychedelics that I've described as an overwhelming sensation that everything is right in the universe. And part of the power of that for psychedelics as therapy is that it's a matter of acceptance. It doesn't matter what happened in the past or what's going to happen in the future. Right now, in the present, everything in the universe is exactly as it should be. It's a beautiful thing because it's so powerfully true, and it is the source of so many mental health problems for humanity that we just don't live in the present. And what I had to do was achieve at least a certain level of emotional maturity that my parents never had, never passed on to me. And I'll just say, I mean, what do I want to accuse my parents of here? Like, is it enough to just say they were both very emotionally distant and emotionally immature?
But they didn't get to do mushrooms like our generation did. So we have to give the boomers the little bit of
they did though. Well, okay, so
they did.
But I want to give my parents credit for being smart, capable, financially responsible for me and my brother and the rest of our siblings. But the combination of being emotionally distant is a lack of connectedness that in a healthy family parents experience with their children. The emotional immaturity is sort of a failure in modeling of behavior for me. So I never, and I, both of my parents, you would never describe, none of their friends would ever describe them as emotionally immature. They're very well composed people. They have in public, and I don't want to say in private that they're like out of control.
But they're mature, but they're still emotionally immature.
Right. You can present as mature and be very immature inside, right? You can have the habits and the decorum and the self-control and the communication skills to be functionally in 90+% of situations very mature. But if you don't have the maturity to express joy or exuberance or enthusiasm, and those are like big things missing in our family growing up. I can't think of my parents, either one of them, ever being really excited for anything in their own life, let alone something in their kids' lives. And that's so important for every kid to get from their parent, right? And part of it's the approval of it, is to see that your parents are proud of you. I never really got that from either of them. And so I grew up emotionally stunted enough that I joined the Marine Corps. Yeah, and I'm that's a joke, supposedly.
I know.
But I'm making a very serious point out of that. And this is what I've talked about publicly before, that there's a general social conditioning that happens by the machine to keep people in a state of being emotionally stunted, so they are more likely to join the military. People who are fully actualized adults don't feel the need to look past the mythology that serving your country represents and join the Marine Corps to get my teeth fixed, or to get free blowjobs and drinks at the bar, and smoke blowing up my ass and parades and all that happy horse shit. But for a lot of people, they say that joining the military is like taking charge of your life. And for me, getting away from my parents, and then my parents got divorced when I was 10, by the way. That's kind of an important part of the backstory here, right? The other siblings, my dad remarried and had 3 more kids. So I have 2 half brothers and a half sister from his second marriage. And in the Marines, they kind of take that role of a parent, but they don't give you autonomy. They don't really encourage. I mean, they take charge of your career. What is it with the Air Force? Aim high, but no, there's like take off your life. That sounds terrible. No, there's all these military recruiting mottos like accelerate your life or take charge of your career or career opportunities, and it's like
we will give you the acceptance that you have been lacking.
And that's what it's really about, Joey. Thank you. Yes, to get me back on track here, because I could rant about the military and psychological control and recruiting that I was actually a direct part of for a long time. But I do want to kind of get to this point of emotional maturity and where I want to let people know where I'm at with my midlife crisis, dear. That's really important.
Well, we have an answer to D food.
Oh, yes.
If you want to address, I think we're right.
Nope, as nothing. So
Peterman said, would D food be that you are learning more about clean eating, intermittent fasting, and ridding yourself of commercialized synthesized foods? No,
the term is D-foo, as in D-foo. Actually, I don't know if it's you can spell it
D-E.
No, well, I did say D food because it's a verb. So past tense, I have now defood.
Apostrophe D. Right.
I don't like the apostrophe.
Whatever, I get it. Okay.
But yeah, it's like to unfoo, DE-FOO, to defoo. It's a concept from Stefan Molyneux from his early work. There's another clue for y'all. See if we get a guess. You guys got 6 minutes, and I'm going to give this one up because we got to go to our guest. But I think my parents have a unique streak, and I don't want to condemn them and I don't want to judge them, but there's specific things that I have experienced in behavior from them that are clearly products of emotional immaturity. So I'm not gonna try to get into it, more than that or accuse them of more than that. And my parents were never abusive. I don't. Yeah, some people will try to extrapolate. Well, a mother who's emotionally distant is inherently abusive by being cold and giving you abandonment issues. And I had thought of it consciously and known it from that experience as abandonment issues for a good part of my adult life. But there was really kind of getting to the bottom of the rabbit hole where I realized that I had surpassed my parents in emotional maturity and needed to judge them and judge my experience with them in order to understand, the effects that growing up with them had on me. So, I guess you could, well, now I'm kind of I don't want to give away the term, because I haven't cut off my family, but I've basically ended any active relationships with anybody in my biological family. And part of it was realizing that keeping my parents in mind as my parents, giving them that place, and Joey, by the way, this is a big explanation for me, like why I have sought. It's funny as an activist, it's more like surrogate mothers have found me. I think mothers, like older wise women, look at me and go, "He was undermothered, wasn't he?" Yeah, we're gonna step in and help him out a little bit. So I've had a lot of surrogate mother figures from my activism, women who are fellow activists who see me on the front lines, who are very appreciative and supportive, and have played that role. And I've gotten that more from them. And what I needed to do was separate from my parents, and I had already separated from my biological brother over. I don't want to get too accusatory, but basically, well, it was a lot of it was started with COVID stuff. A lot of what blew up with my mom right before I decided to say, like, look, Mom, I don't want anything to do with you right now, was about COVID stuff.
And that sucks. That was the case for a lot of people through COVID.
Yeah, and in a sense, COVID exposed a lot that needed to be exposed, right? Part of it is like 60% of Americans. Oh, we should look this up. We haven't in a long time, right? What's the statistics? This is, ladies and gentlemen, this is our serious COVID segment for the night. How many Americans are vaccinated? Actually, not vaccinated is what came up in the more people, because I want
for that. Like, I
want the data table. Yeah, more people are looking for how many are not vaccinated. I think it's because people are looking for that comfort. Right, a lot of us who are unvaccinated want to know that we're not the. No. Think about it. No, dear, from a practical sense.
I'm thinking from a practical sense. I'm putting my robot hat on, and I think that there's more hateful people out there that want to say how many people aren't vaccinated, so they can come out and say you people are bad and you're making us sick and killing our grandmas. And those are the people who are searching for the stats so they can use them as talking points when they argue with their family.
As one of the unvaccinated, I'm looking at this like, not alone, am I? And it's like, no, we're not. We're not even close to alone.
It looks like you've inspired quite a bit of people. So
Adam Young, to the fact that government is an immoral organization, can never be legitimate because theft is illegitimate. It's funded by theft. Keep singing your song and truth. Thank you very much. Still don't have an answer to what DFU stands for.
We do not have an answer to DFU.
All right. So while I'm waiting for this to pull up, one of the things, like which Joe was saying, revealed right during COVID, people who are of the, I guess, obedient personality disorders. We talk about authoritarian personality disorders, those who want to use authority abusively or exploitively, right? And a lot of people who are voters, right? People who vote enthusiastically and go to Republican and Democrat Party meetings, they're authoritarian personality disorder. But in terms of people who succumb to the fear narrative of COVID and took the vaccine without questioning, without research, that is connection still.
Yeah.
That is something that like needed to be revealed, and it's actually kind of a big thing with my family. Is that for all their bullshit lip service to respect for my work, when it came down to it, they did not appreciate it at any genuine level. Just enough to be smart and to be appropriately skeptical of government going into COVID. And in part of what I was doing was saying, like, I don't want that in my life. And a lot of it came down to, even recent family gatherings where the authoritarian streaks in my family members came out, where, yeah, we're going to use this to control you. And even recently, well, you can't come to this event unless you get tested. But I'm the only one because everybody else is vaccinated, because I'm the threat. And it's funny because now I have COVID. But like, even then, it's just, there's so many problems with the premises of this. I'm not going to disentangle, but see, I didn't do Google. I want Google. I'm using DuckDuckGo now. That's why I didn't get the good.
See
how many? See, on this it'll be how many Americans have been vaccinated will be the first suggestion. No, that's the chart we want to pull up. So since nobody got it, Defu.
Come on, guys.
We're gonna get to our guests in just a minute here. Defu, Foo, F-O-O. I almost said it.
You guys can research it on your phone, and nobody's.
Someone's gonna pull it up by the end of the show. No, I'm kind of surprised that even with a small live audience, we don't have anybody who is who's been around long enough to remember this being a big issue with Stefan Molyneux.
Like Kung Fu?
F-O-O, not F-U. F-O-O stands for Family of Origin. So to defu is to separate yourself from your family of origin. And this is something that Stefan Molyneux advocated from very early on in his career as a pundit, but certainly well before he went Trump-tarded. And it was a very positive influence for a lot of libertarians in realizing that, I'll put it to you this way, like straight up, as a libertarian, as a voluntarist, if you are a statist, an unthinking statist, someone who supports government, and you've never been confronted with this intellectual concept of libertarian ethics, that you own yourself and coercion and blah 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 blah, non-aggression principle, when you are confronted with it for the first time, your response to it's very telling. Do you care about people, or have you just been voting Democrat to pretend about caring about people? Do you really think about how principles apply to politics, or have you just been letting Republican blowhards represent you and make you feel better about yourself? And it doesn't mean, I'm not trying to say that if you don't immediately become a libertarian, you're a bad person.
We're all born libertarians, let's be real.
Right. But if you are thoughtfully presented with the message of libertarianism and you don't acknowledge it properly, you don't acknowledge that it's an ethical premise, you don't at least incorporate the call to a higher standard of ethics into how you look at politics, you're basically saying that your engagement in politics is bullshit, is not based on genuine desire to make the world a better place, or to make America a better place, or to serve humanity. You're voting for some bullshit, petty personal reasons. And I'm still sort of settling with this, but I separated with deliberately with two of my siblings over the past year, 2 of the 4, and the other 2, I'm just like, they haven't been responsive to me making an effort to reach out to them as their older brother. And I'm like, I got so many people in my audience who would love having me as an older brother, who like want that. Like, I get this, like Joey knows, like sees the emails, like a lot of the stuff that I get is people asking, brotherly advice type of stuff. And then that's what makes for our more interesting shows anyhow. And I just sort of was like, I'm not going to chase these guys. Like, I'm not like, and frankly, I don't want to judge them, and I'm not going to publicly accuse them of anything. There have been plenty of like petty specifics of shit where I'm like, if I started saying shit, people would be like, that's getting into gossip. So out of respect for my family's private, like, they don't deserve. I think I can make my point without, accusing specifics. But there's been dishonesty, there's been theft, there's been hiding shit, there's been behind the back stuff. There's just been all sorts of it's petty. It's nothing to write home about by itself. So there's kind of a grieving process, right? And I'm thinking back to Stefan Molyneux's advice about defooing, and he got in big trouble with this in the mainstream media because this is when he was accused of being a cult leader. You're getting people to separate from their families. Oh my gosh. And it's like, yeah, when they're abusive and they don't have the courage to separate, he's giving them the framework and the courage and the inspiration to separate from unhealthy relationships. And I took it as a good understanding of separating, what is the purpose of your relationships, right? And what are the premises? And what Stefan Molyneux was saying and advocating defooing and getting away from abusive family relationships wasn't you're better off on your own, get away from your family, but consider those relationships from the ground up without the sentimentality of family for a second. Like, you have a shared experience and you have a shared biology. And those are great things. I'm not saying like that in and of itself is insignificant. Shared experience and family experience could be really huge, but if that experience is an abusive one, you're going to be a lot better off freeing yourself from that.
Free your mind.
And so, so for everybody in my family, and I want to be, I didn't technically defoo by Stefan Molyneux standards of like cutting them off from communication, like not giving them your phone number and things like that. All I did was just sort of be like, yeah, I don't really want anything to do with you. If you want to have something to do with me, you got to make the effort at this point. And that's enough. But I've been able to sort of put those relationships in context. And a lot of abusive family relationships take their premises from, well, you're family, so you have an obligation to me.
Now, I will argue that this is one of the first times in history where, for survival reasons, humans have been able to do
right.
this.
We didn't need to.
Before we had to. You're born in it. You literally have to survive on your bloodline, and so that was the way it was prior to
not clinging to family and clan and tribe as a matter of survival is kind of a modern luxury.
Totally.
But I hope that you will all take some consideration from what I've just said and reconsidering your relationships from the ground up. And what I'm looking forward to now that I'm about halfway through my midlife crisis, rebuilding where I have identified gaps in my own emotional maturity. And with that,
oh my goodness.
Fireplace a little bit. We had the fire. We're sitting in a different position tonight. We had the fire turned way up for me to cook. So Joey's going to open the door while I introduce our guest. Although I feel like after that segment, Jason, I hope you've enjoyed that sitting backstage. I gotta.
Next step is de-governing, right? That's the next. We're defooing. Our next step in evolution is separating ourselves from abusive governments, which is all of them currently. So,
yeah. Reconsidering relationships from the ground up, which is a perfect segue for our guest. Ladies and gentlemen, our first guest this evening on Adam versus the Man is none other than Jason Wright of Yes California, the California Independence Organization. I have known him for a little over a year through our mutual work, in that having been invited by our friend Marcus Ruiz Evans to serve on the board of Yes California. And my experience with Jason, I know him from conference calls. It's just like the worst way to get to know someone, but also from the group text chat that we've had going on for Yes California. And yes, I live in Arizona, but as a former Californian and someone who Marcus liked, I was invited to be on the board. Whether Jason keeps me or not, I don't know. But also, I guess I'm a credible advocate of localization and separatism and stepping back from abusive relationships so that voluntary, productive, loving relationships can flourish. And so there's been, but by the way, Jason was like, hey man, are we talking right before this? Are we going to be talking about Cal Exit, or are we going to be talking about mushrooms? So I think he's got something to say about that too. But we want to get Jason to catch us up on the recent change in leadership with Yes California, as there was seemed like really, really dumb, petty drama among the leadership. And if you want to not name names and move past that, I don't really care. But we'd all like to know, from you, what's the state of the California independence movement, and what's your role in it? And am I showing up to board meetings still? What's going on, Jason? Welcome to Adam versus the Man.
Well, let me first start by saying thank you. You were one of the first people to reach out to me when it was announced that things have gone south in the leadership. Me being the only actual officer of the organization, am now tasked as interim president. And, I decided, well, then, that means we need to have some sort of election. Things need to be decided upon by the group. So, not just by default. I mean, I was put in as interim by default, but we all, I know you included, and to quickly answer, yes, please do show up to the board meetings. But we all tend to really prefer, group effort, group brain usage, many heads make light work. And it's not light as in lightweight, but, many heads will make a light turn on.
Well, you definitely have my support in reconstituting and reorganizing whatever you can for this effort. And just I want to ask you next to give us a big background on California independence for people who have never heard of the effort for the or of the organization. But stepping back in terms of what is the California independence movement, and please fill in the gaps here. There's the general sentiment of this existential idea, right, of California leaving the Union. There's various legislative efforts to cut up California in different ways, which aren't really California independence, but to create multiple states. There are different politicians. There have been different organizations, but it was really Marcus Ruiz Evans is the only game in town holding it down for years until he stepped back recently over the recent conflicts. And so now you're stepping in. So what is the purpose of Yes California? And what role do you and the organization hope to have in promoting California independence?
That is a great question. So, yes, the idea of California pursuing the reestablishment of its independent nationhood for our current modern time, that was brought forth by Marcus Ruiz Evans, and all credit should go to that man for that. He literally wrote the book that started CalExit, and then he got together, worked with a guy who, he had the faith, the fire, the fervor, could gracefully accept when he was wrong on something and take the correct position at that point, right? They together helped to build the CalExit movement and form the organization that we know as Yes California, which is the home of the CalExit movement. Now, California, California independence is all about just that, reestablishment of our independence, breaking California back out from under the federal boot so that we can actually fix the things that we need to fix here, so that the 40 million people or so can, stop suffering. And sure, there's like 10% of California that's actually not suffering through this pandemic. Ooh, great. That's good for them. It doesn't really help me any though. So what I look for in it is, one, in the movement in general, I don't do it because I hate America, I hate democracy. It's nothing like that. It's actually the opposite. I know enough of what the founding fathers talked about, disagreed on, and agreed upon, and what they ultimately decided on, and why. I've, I did some pretty in-depth studies on all of that. I'm not saying I'm like a constitutional scholar or anything, but maybe unaccredited. And I know anything more than two-party system, party-based system with anything more than two. Now, technically, we do have the libertarians, you have the Greens, and I see it as the third parties, the independent parties, we're the middle ground. The libertarians are maybe the right end of the spectrum, and I don't know, the Democratic Socialist Party of America or something like that would be the left end. And I think Greens are probably pretty middle, maybe really ever so slightly to the right, just based on some of the financial policy stuff. And that's okay, because I'm not a left versus a right kind of a guy. California has, nearly 40 million people, and a lot of them are not doing so well, myself included.
Yeah.
And not just because of the pandemic. It's been like that since before.
Well, so yeah, well, I mean, we could, I don't know if I want to get sidebarred on the topic of California and COVID, because, I want to ask, like, how do people feel about that? But let me put the question this way and see if you come back to it, because one of the things that was most striking to me that I learned about localization from my experience working with you and Marcus and the Calexit Congress is that because you kind of left out conservatives there. The most compelling reason for California to go independent is for conservatives and libertarians, people who are, fiscally conservative in the traditional political matrix of bullshit, because it's not just that California as a very, very liberal state, however you want to describe the general population sentiment, they get away from the federal government, they get more independence to custom tailor their liberalism in their government, but that the fraud, waste, and abuse of the federal government that Californians are subsidizing through federal taxes and federal regulations and federal oversight of state programs is so fucking wasteful and destructive that even if California were to get independent from the federal government and then become twice as liberal, it could not, the California state government, it would take a lot for it to be so overgrown and so corrupt and so centralized that it would come anywhere near matching the evil of the federal government, even the suffering of Californians by being attached to the federal government. And so Californians, fiscally speaking, will get a more fiscally conservative experience with that one level of localization. And that to me is just, it's kind of one of those like, oh yeah, counterintuitive, but then you go, wow, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So I want to ask you, like, what have you done, and where is the success in appealing? Maybe you don't care, it's such a small population, California, but for conservatives who want to get on board with this, but why should Californians support Calexit? And then separately, why should the rest of America support Calexit?
Well, so that's a really good to the point question. For the conservatives outside of California, why should that group want it? Well, we have roughly 12% of this nation's population. 12%. And now we all know the stories about people saying, hey, don't come here to my state and turn it all into California. And, hey, I feel that. I saw a great one saying, fine, I won't go to Texas and turn it into California if Texas doesn't come here and turn it into Texas. And, I don't dislike Texas. It's a little hot for me, but, the stars at night are big and bright. It's true. And the prairie sky. But I really, I see it as, if you don't want this 12% of the population to have any influence over you, your policies, and all of that, the only way is to have us not being part of that legal system. You need to let us go. That's
so you're
how
basically saying that if the United States dropped California, it'd be a huge tilt towards the Republican Party in national politics, right?
Well, mainly thanks to the fact that the DNC undermined Senator Bernard Sanders twice in a row.
Well,
It's how they lost the youth. It's how they lost the folks my age who are mid-30s. It's how they lost a lot of faith and confidence in their party altogether, enough so that the vice president is now one of the least popular VPs ever in United States history, and the current president is at 33%, which does seem like it's probably the lowest the president has hit since we started keeping track. It really screams to me that
this needs to be
California's 12% isn't going to hold off the Republican wave, even if we're still here.
If I may do my job as a board member, I don't know I guess I'm still a board member.
Yeah,
I think what we need to do then is find some major Republican donors who only care about Republicans being in charge in Washington, and they're happy to let California go and say, we'd rather be the rulers of a bigger fish in a smaller pond. And I think who would do that? Bannon. Let's call Steve Bannon. Bannon can find us. Yes, California.
Totally.
Well, so here's the thing: is we have a very strong emphasis on 100% legal and 100% peaceful, and so it can't get too fervent, should I say?
We don't have there. I'll let me put it like this, because I want to be as sort of pessimistic or as critical as I can on us as a movement of Yes California, in that we have failed to capture the sentiment. There is a larger sentiment for Calexit than has been organized and has been represented politically. And I often resented Marcus's articulation of the commitment to peaceful and legal, not the peaceful part, 100% on that. Nonviolence for this, absolutely all the way. There's no reason except to use violence except in immediate self-defense, and that's not what we're talking about here. But legal, I understand, and I came to accept it, because legal could be, even if the federal government declares it illegal, it's that what Calexit is committed to is pursuing on California's end of it a legal process that is at least as much as afforded to us by the California state government, a clear representation of the consent of the people of California, right?
Indeed. And, I agree with you. I'm the Robert Starkian hypothesis, so I'll give him a shout out because I just recently did an interview for him as well. He and I are co-chairs of the International and Domestic Issues Committee for the Calexit Congress. And I have always felt that internationally, we are we as an organization are internationally known and recognized and respected. We're seen as very fair, level-headed, reasonable folks, which I think is quite reflective of most California. Everyone's got their extremists, but most Californians are just average people. And so I've always felt the international outreach, the dealing with international issues, reaching out for international support, giving international support. One of the reasons why we were so keen on having the founder of Gardenia come on board is because, oh my God, we're still here running an organization talking about it, but man, you did it.
Here we are, officially sovereign in our hearts and minds, if not yet in our paperwork and organization yet.
But and I meant to ask you, what's the closest town? Because I'm trying to look up a possible Greyhound ticket out for your birthday party.
Yeah, no, we're near Ashfork. If you look up Ashfork, Arizona, it's on the 40. And if you bribe your Greyhound driver on your way to Flagstaff, you can get him to let you off in Ashfork.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the international support, that gets me thinking, we don't need to talk to Steve Bannon. We need to find a Saudi prince who wants to back a Republican in Congress who's part of his secret plan is to fund CalExit. Oh, yeah. But Jason, that gets me to, I think, the last big question that I have for tonight about CalExit, unless we have some comments or anything specifically on this topic Joy wants to bring up. What is the mechanism by which you see this happening, and over what timeline? And what resistance might there be that from the U.S. federal government that would draw this out? And even if right now there was a vote and we won and Californians voted clearly, overwhelmingly to be independent, you look at modern independence movements, even things like Brexit or the Catalonian independence movement, or other states in the United. Well, I guess there aren't any other states in the United States.
Everybody's heads implode after Brexit? Isn't it? We all died, right? It was so dangerous, and there wasn't
enough centralized government to go around, and the sky fell and everybody died. Yeah, but these examples that I bring up, I mentioned, or even like Scottish independence, they're very slow. They're very deliberate. We're talking about a massive institutional realignment where most government institutions on the ground are preserved, not eliminated, but just put under new management. So, at the final part of that question is then how long is all this going to take?
Well, and that's a very accurate assessment that it's kind of a very slow, deliberate. I would equate it to having to relocate part of the spine. Like if you get a spinal dislocation or something that could be fixed, you don't want to just, see your friend there and, oh, let me jump on your back and we'll pray for the best. Your buddy's probably going to be paralyzed. But if you work out the muscles around it and you ease it, and you realign the things above and below, and you really carefully go about it, you more than likely won't cripple your friend, but you will help save them. And that's what I think this is, a gentle, blatant, purposeful, careful realignment so that California can walk again.
Well, that's a good analogy.
I like it.
But if you want to get more into the specifics of mechanism and timing, we're talking about referendum, and getting a referendum on the ballot is like gathering signatures. I mean, we need, if this is going to succeed in the way that we are describing procedurally, we're talking about taking advantage of California's unique referendum process, which is gathering how many signatures to get something on the ballot. I mean, it's a
I believe it was 680,000. It's based on like 20 or 25% of the last registered vote count, which we hit 21 million the last registry. So the number we had to get for signatures was much higher than it was some years before. Ultimately, the legality comes down to, if we really want it, all we have to do is reach out and take it and make it happen, because the United States is signed on to this treaty, this international treaty that lets them into the United Nations. In the United Nations entrance charter and treaties and trade deals, first and foremost, above the sacred founding documents even, here, that's the rule of law in America. So this being a treaty, it takes precedent over everything else, and it lays out the right of self-determination as a fundamental human right. And it goes into it, how to actually correctly pursue this and stake your claim to the world, as well as penalties for the overlord nation should they impede, interfere, or, do some outright genocidal stuff.
So with
ultimately, the United States would have to let us do it, or else they could be removed from the UN and lose their "We're the World Police" badge that they love so much, because it helps justify their weapons sales around the world.
This is the language that gets me excited when it gets down to Jason, as head of CalExit, yes, California is the name of the organization, is kind of committed to this temporary political compromise. Now he's like he said, he's more of a green than any other political persuasion, but nobody's perfect. So yeah, I know.
Ouch.
One of the compromises that Jason has to make in representing this cause politically is a kind of California identitarianism. We identify as Californians. We have to reinforce that. And there is such a thing, there is a distinct California culture. And it's not just the borders, the bullshit lines on a map drawn by government and circumstance of history that give us California. There is something to be said for California is a distinct cultural, political, et cetera, entity. But what gets me excited is that in order for him to make this case, Jason has to talk about the principles of localization and the right to self-determination. And then I go, after California goes independent, I'm starting the Orange County independence movement. And you see that there's, for people who don't know, Orange County is a conservative pocket south of LA in California. So I see this as a really exciting, critical effort right now politically, which is why I'm happy to give whatever time I can to sit in on board meetings and hear smart people like Jason and Marcus pontificate. But I lend my support in promoting this, and I really, Jason, I mean, I'll tell you, I mean, being absolutely critical, and I hope you take this to heart as obviously positive feedback, is that a lot of what Marcus got us involved in and organizing was very important, establishing an organization with committee documents and blah, blah, blah. But what is needed first and foremost is something that brings together that broader California sentiment under hashtag CalExit or the Yes California banner, organizationally sufficient enough to get the signatures, to get on the ballot, to win the vote. And I think for that, you're either going to need a better book than Marcus's. Books don't ever change anything, do they?
What's a book?
People don't read books
anymore. Is that?
The paper things.
Paper thing.
It's like your phone, but like one part of it on a piece of paper.
Oh yeah.
And then like a bunch of them stacked up.
I remember.
I mean, yeah, I remember those.
You can roll weed.
Yeah, you can rip them apart and roll joints if you need to. But and this is where I say I hope there's a focus on on fundraising, and I know that you are someone who has the humility that if Steve Bannon or some Saudi prince decided to secretly fund and organize Calexit, without your name attached to it, you'd still be like, yes, let's make it happen. It's one of the things I love about you and so many others on the Calexit team, is that sort of
ultimately, as long as it's legally acceptable,
right, then you wouldn't, you would be on board with the effort. I hope it's Calexit Congress. I hope it's Yes California, this organization that Marcus gave birth to, that you aren't, or this organization and movement. Really, he deserves a lot of credit for being a sort of godfather of the modern California independence movement, although there have been different versions of the past, and you are now the custodian of this. I hope it stays with us, with the grassroots and founded in those principles. But if it doesn't, I'm not committed to the organization or the form or the name, because this is such an important idea that is long overdue. All right, we have a comment on Odyssey from Organize Revolt. I suspect U.S. veto power on the UN would prevent that.
Yeah, any action, that's something to consider. Of course they try to stop any kind of.
Would that be the place that this would come to a showdown, though? The UN, Jason, why don't you answer this?
If we ultimately, and I've thought about that, because at one point the power of veto, this was several years ago, the power of veto on whether or not an issue comes to the floor at the UN, back then it rested with Russia, and someone from the UN representative group from Russia, who, they understand the right to self-determination, human right, any country that tries to interfere with this could be removed. They're like, hey, we won't use our power of veto against you.
Just to remind,
it's not really because they support California Calexit. It's because they know the law says very clearly they can't interfere. Now, if America does, then America would be less smart than Russia was, right?
So I just got to point out, I think most people in my audience are familiar with the concept, but most Americans don't really know the difference between the USSR and Russia. I mean,
the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. Yeah, that ceased to be in, I believe that was 89, 91, somewhere in there.
I will admit, I am, bringing this up, making fun of American ignorance of history, but I am only aware of it enough to know how relevant it is today, that there used to be the Soviet bloc, the USSR, United Soviet Socialist Republics. And
now there's the Russian Federation, which isn't just Russia. It's actually like there are presidents of their respective countries who fall under the Russian Federation, and ultimately they sit like at the table with Putin and advise him on what their country needs and wants and yada yada. But it's a little bit similar in the governmental workings, but very dissimilar in the ideology behind it.
Well, as you can see, our windows have gotten dark in the last hour since the show started. And we are watching Jason do this interview by joint light. I hope it's a joint.
Cigarette. Okay.
Yeah, it's tobacco. Sorry.
For links. So just
links. What is your main website right now?
The Yes California organization website and the Twitter were being managed by the now former president.
Still sees the shakeup.
He still has control, retains control, and will not relinquish. And so,
support the effort and get in touch with you.
At JSRW1986 on Twitter. That's where you can find me personally. So there will be things about Stargate, there will be things about space exploration and food, but also there will be a lot of political stuff.
Yeah.
That's one way. I accept direct messages, private messages through there. So if you ever want to get involved, you could also, if you're someone, and I will say this both for you, Adam, as well as for your friends who may be interested. If you're a friend of Adam, I know Adam's a good guy and he doesn't really like to associate with people who aren't decent folk. So if you're interested, you can get my email from Adam, and Adam, I'll let you kind of, filter out.
Anybody,
make
if
sure
any
that
volunteer specifically, you can email adam@thefreedomline.com, subject California exit or Cal exit or whatever. I'll pass it on to Jason, no problem. I mean, it's unfortunate, but I certainly understand. And this is a very sort of awkward transition time for the organization. Again, I really applaud what you're doing, understanding what it means as an activist to kind of pick up the pieces of an organization when the officers around you have bailed on their responsibilities. But Jason, one last thing on this, I want to encourage you to come to the California Libertarian Party convention.
Oh yeah,
we are going to be there, Joey and I.
Let's party.
February 18, 19, 20, somewhere in the LA area this time, right?
Right.
So somewhere in the LA area, you can look it up, California Libertarian Party. And I hope that Cal Exit will have a table there and we'll get a chance to get, a presentation on this. And if you don't do it, Jason, I'll have to do it. As a give the speech on behalf of Cal Exit. This is why I'm a board. This is why I'm a board member. I'm the Arizonan going back to California to tell Californians to leave the union. Yes. Yeah. So
well, then definitely please show up on Sunday. This is the officiating of the vote. It's the final chance to vote in person on video. And then the next meeting, the Sunday after, will officiate everything. Titles will be dispersed. And then if I'm currently in the running for CEO. I'm currently the interim president, but
I mean, it's kind of
should the vote go in my favor, I will be CEO. And one of the first pieces of business I would like to discuss would be that. And I would ask you to be there to bring that up for us.
Absolutely. All right. Finally, I know we're over time. Appreciate you staying late with us tonight, Jason. You had something you wanted to say about mushrooms?
Oh, yeah. As someone who's lived their entire adult life, I was diagnosed with PTSD in, I can't even remember what year that was. I was like 15. I had a very, very rough childhood. Here, I'll turn my camera off so you can see the only picture I have ever with my biological father. That was from like 4 years ago or so.
Oh, wow.
He looks like a wonderful man. I don't want to be presumptuous.
Joey's beard bias.
Epic beard.
Yes, he played the mall Santa in his later days and loved it.
There's a meme that goes around women's groups. It's like, find a woman with muscles, because a man with muscles, it has patience. It takes patience to build up muscles. And a man with muscles is a man that has the patience to deal with your shit. I would say a guy with a long beard also
can put up
good credibility.
Total patience.
Yes. Yeah, especially a glorious beard like the one he had.
Yep.
Yeah, so with living with PTSD my whole life, I have tried all sorts of pharmaceutical medications, had them prescribed, and a couple of them kind of worked in a sense, but then they just made me feel really like high and dizzy, and I wasn't able to continue to be productive. I did try magic mushrooms before as medical for PTSD, and at first it was working, and then I overdid it, and it was not fun. Overdoing pretty much anything, not really fun. But it was trial and error self-medication. because it's not something that pharmaceutical companies acknowledge, and so the state, not going to acknowledge it.
Normalize and make it easy to talk about and accessible so that people can get that benefit without having to go through so much trial and error individually.
Yeah, and I found with my light frame, I was able to have one whole psilocybin mushroom, just one, just regular size one, not a big old tree looking one. And that once a month, kind of for the first day, right, I was just laughing randomly at anything and everything. But I'm normally not even ever that happy of a person. So it was a positive change for people around me and for myself. And especially because people around me openly acknowledged it. Wow, it's great to see you smiling, Jay. I was like, huh? Oh, yeah, I guess I don't smile so much. And eventually, towards the end of the month, it kind of wore out a bit, but I wasn't feeling anywhere near as stressed or anxious. Things build up for me, and it's over time, the muck building up on the back makes you bend over, and it was like being able to grease my back so that the muck didn't really stick.
I love the way you describe that, man. And I wonder, because one of the things that we're doing now that I have legalized mushrooms for myself by virtue of knowing how to play the religious freedom card effectively in a legal situation, as I just proved in Saguache County, Colorado, saying that we want to grow and give away mushrooms, so at least first to veterans, but we're not going to be discriminatory like that. But we are growing and giving away mushrooms here, and I don't. One of the things that we're developing is sort of this retreat model for psilocybin, and it may be that that's kind of entirely unnecessary or overdoing it, because it might be that when psilocybin is fully normalized, you go to the pharmacy, and if you want to do an intense dose and sit in the back room and be supervised, you can, and then you get that and you go home, and maybe that you do that once a month, and that has an incredible lasting positive realignment effect. And man, it is, I mean, we talk about cannabis, and maybe this is where California is kind of a generation ahead of the rest of the country almost, that you can start to see the long-term benefits of normalizing cannabis usage in California, and the rest of the country is catching up. But psilocybin, for how cheap it is to produce, how convenient and safe and easy it is, and how powerful it is to shut down so much pharmaceutical mental health bullshit that is holding us back right now, man, I'm so hopeful. Yeah. And I want to say one of the reasons is because Jason's story is not that uncommon. One of the reasons that I won in Saguache County is when they say, if you don't bend over and accept letting us fuck you now, we're going to assemble a jury of your peers, and they're going to give us permission to fuck you a lot harder later. And I can go, no, you can't, because the mushrooms have reached more than 1 in 12 Americans who know that they're fucking magic. As far as the human brain is concerned, I mean, I kind of giggle anytime someone calls me. I don't know
the right dosage.
But Jason called them that, and I'm like, yeah, that's why we call them magic mushrooms.
Zenith Point Zero, I think that's how you pronounce this mesh of letters. On Odyssey says the FBI is mad.
They are happy.
Does that make sense to anyone? Makes sense to the government institution that is supposed to support liberty and freedom. So that, to me, leans them ever so slightly more towards criminal thinking. They need cognitive classes. Yeah, if we could get people in the government on a strict regimen of mushrooms, maybe we'd see the government we deserve.
See, yeah, maybe that's it. The reason mushrooms are sort of as legal as they are now is the government is really just concerned with government employees doing them. Like, if the rest of you do it, just don't tell the government employees about mushrooms, or they're all going to quit their jobs.
Yeah. Well, and you know, there is something to be said for responsibility and duty. And like, you know, if the person's in their free time and they go on a trip, that's their choice. Just please don't go to work like that. And you know, if you're like Secretary of State or you're the guy who holds the black box, the nuclear football for the president, maybe you shouldn't be dropping acid or something.
No, then you need to. Those are the people who need to more than anybody else. Those are the people who need, the people who have the button to,
Everybody all of a sudden realizes none of this is real and none of it matters.
And
so
we are all one.
The black box or whatever. Safe.
Yeah,
that's the guy who needs the ass the most.
I'm just saying while they're at work.
That ego death could definitely push a button.
Psilocybin and militarism. Magic mushrooms and militarism are fundamentally incompatible.
The government's done LSD. They've already been down this path.
They know. All right, Jason. Yeah. We look forward to seeing you in Gardenia soon, brother. Any final thoughts?
I would say Viva todos Californios. Viva to all Californians.
Here. All right. Thank you, brother. All right. So we got just 10 minutes till our next guest comes on. I'm really excited about this. It's a big shift in gears. It's a tragic story. But we got to do a few legal updates as promised. First, our friend Ed Vallejo, I have been keeping up with the news. It's all bad news.
Can't. I'm gonna.
So recap. Well, January 13, Ed Vallejo was arrested going into an FBI friendly interrogation session questioning. He went involuntarily for questioning. Apparently,
they set it up.
The night before.
They set it up. Don't sell it short.
All right. Well, apparently the night before. No, they definitely did. But who? Well, this is how government disperses responsibility, right? But yeah, the agent he was talking to allegedly, according to Ed, apologized to him, like, sorry, man, they didn't give me the chance to give you the heads up. This indictment just came down last night. And so it was the other 9 defendants were already in custody for January 6th related stuff because they were the oath keepers. I think all the other 9 were ones who went into the building, right?
Yeah, they were there.
But they're getting Stuart Rhodes, the head of oath keepers, for being on the outside and coordinating, and Ed Vallejo on the outside for coordinating quick reaction force. They have them just for the seditious conspiracy charge. For these other defendants, they were already locked up because they've been charged with other things related to January 6th and have other cases. As you know, from last Thursday, Ed was denied a pretrial release at his detention hearing here at the Sandra here in fucking Phoenix.
Here in Arizona.
Fucking Phoenix. The city that shouldn't exist. Yeah, at Phoenix, Arizona, at the Sandra Day O'Connor Federal Courthouse, which we ranted about on last Friday's episode, which Jim will get up tonight, right? Jim will get it up eventually.
Yeah.
It's a pretty good one to hear. We want that one on the record, Jim.
I think it's lost to StreamYard's new terms.
Is that it?
I'll explain that later.
Well, I don't want to know.
Figure it out.
I don't want to know. Jim will figure it out. Jim and Joey. Anybody but Adam will figure that out. But the update is we were expecting that same day Stuart Rhodes would have a hearing, and he didn't. He did, but it wasn't with a detention. It wasn't a detention hearing. It was something else, and they postponed his detention hearing to Monday this week. And we thought that on Monday we would have a decision on whether Stuart Rhodes would be detained or not pre-trial. And the judge punted on it and said, I don't know. I'll have a. She didn't say I don't. He didn't say I don't know. They judges don't have that kind of humility. Who am I kidding? But the judge said I will render a written decision on the detention issue, pretrial detention for Stuart Rhodes, within the next day or two. And within that time, there was an arraignment in D.C. and apparently Stuart Rhodes, still in Texas, attended by video, but Ed did not. And Ed has a separate arraignment coming up this Friday. So that's like the next big news. Ed, I got to speak to him today. We have all the appropriate, legal support and logistical support in place for him right now. Fortunately, it seems like he's going to be able to handle this case with a public defender, partly because of the political nature of it. But let's hope that's the case, and we don't have to like try to scramble to raise $100,000. But if we do, I'm going to be calling all the fucking magatards who donated to the January 6th event in the first place before we ever ask the public for money for something about this. I will go broke trolling Trump for $100,000 to support Ed Vallejo before I would ask for public donation.
We just looked this up. How many Oath Keeper members are there?
38,000 on paper, and like they think 7,000 or 8,000 actually.
I mean, $1 from each of them, to 5.
Well, we'll see where this goes. Like, because there hasn't been that ever yet. So I've been talking to Kelly Sorrell, who is the new head of Oath Keepers or interim head of Oath Keepers as of Stuart Rhodes getting arrested. Okay. Yeah, and she's an attorney, but she can't have anything officially to do with the case for obvious conflict of interest reasons. Although I don't know why it's obvious, it shouldn't, whatever. It
makes sense in the world.
Right, and then the bullshit legal framework of, oh, no one has conflict of interest. We can totally stamp that out just by saying it doesn't exist, right? Yeah. So Kelly Sorrell and I have been in contact, and I actually told Ed this, and I'll tell just anybody who's an hour and a half into my podcast. We're going to be launching a project next week called the Oath Breakers. For anybody who wants to differentiate themselves from the Oath Keepers. So this is, we sort of sneak, should I read the first paragraph? I like just enough time to sneak this in. We, the Oath Breakers, stand for peace, love, freedom, truth, and consent. We pledge absolute commitment to only nonviolent means of achieving our goals. While some of us are motivated by having sworn a false oath to the U.S. Constitution and having done violence on behalf of government, as a result, we all unite in rejection of false authority, false oaths, false history, and the current U.S. Constitution. Some of us are constitutionalists, but all recognize that for a constitution to be valid, it must have the consent of the governed, as described in the American Declaration of Independence. A valid oath must be sworn by sober free will, not under threat and free of false pretense. Given the unethical history, nature, and premises of the U.S. Constitution, no oath sworn to it can be valid. And I'll skip ahead. There's 3 main paragraphs, and then there's this last paragraph. We find that subservience and obedience to unjust authority is a sign of weak character and low moral fortitude. While in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. That is only true so long as the people remain blind. We hereby call on all oath keepers to the current U.S. Constitution to get their shit together and join us in condemning their oaths, the U.S. Constitution, and the conceptually, practically, and fundamentally evil government that it has spawned. So obviously we're doing a couple big things with this, differentiating ourselves from oath keepers. Obviously, rhetorically, we're saying we're the absolute opposite. And in a very true philosophical sense, this is, yes, getting to the heart of the differentiation between libertarians and oath keepers, or people who support the U.S. Constitution, or any kind of arbitrary authority, right? Or non-consensual government. Because really, that's it. That's the dividing line. Is government by consent or not? And libertarians are the only ones who really apply that consistently. I might say there are some principled conservatives who at least have that ideal kind of in mind.
See,
and people like Jason, they're more right. They're more Green Party members who believe in a concept of consent in government. But that really is the fundamental ethical line in the sand that we as voluntarists, and I would say as libertarians, are fundamentally drawing. And this is in the Libertarian Party Statement of Principles. So we're at the same time obviously pointing out the hypocrisy of government saying that oath keepers are anti-government. It would be as absurd to call us anti-government as it would be to call someone anti-sex for opposing rape. Yeah, we snuck that one in there. The logo is going to be a parody of the Oath Keepers logo, which is a parody of a military logo already. It was really cool to start with that. There's this, Oath Keepers, or say Oath Breakers, and the Ranger patch at the top, and then the slogan across will say "No government without consent," and in the middle where they have the picture of the Minuteman, the Revolutionary period rifle looking dude. We're gonna have a bald eagle taking a dump on the U.S. Constitution. It'll be that like arrogant, cartoonized, like with the face version of the Constitution of The Simpsons.
Oh, I wish
So-
you guys could see.
We'll get there. We'll get there. Yeah. So
It's not
we're
there
going to
yet.
be focus grouping this and developing this. If you're in the producers club, you're going to see my fun little. This is my art, really. I'm a fucking
You're an artist.
as an activist. This is my art. Just being
World
able
is
to
your canvas. Yeah, that's
conceive
catchy.
ideas and logos and make Facebook pages to stir the shit. Yeah, well, this is gonna be a Facebook page. Why? Because it's a shit stirring exercise, and if you want to stir the shit, you got to go to where the shitty conversation is. So yeah, I think we called for volunteers helping for this last week and didn't get any. It was Friday.
Did we?
We didn't have this stuff.
Oh, I was dead Friday. I
Yeah.
don't know what happened Friday.
So if anybody wants to help out, or just wait till the Facebook page is out and help it go viral, because we're gonna put Marcus Pulis is excited about this idea. My longtime awesome volunteer press secretary for all of my endeavors. He writes my press releases and handles interviews, and
He does a
he's
damn
an
good
awesome
job of it.
just
too.
volunteer who is like a weapon that I've always got
Thank you, King.
right here. We need a press release, Marcus. So we're going to put out a press release. We're going to make the Facebook page and just kind of leave it at that. The reason I mentioned all this, bringing it back to Ed and the legal updates that we got to do before our guest is waiting any longer. Is she backstage?
She is.
Okay, excellent. So since if you can hear us, Dolores, we're just going to take a couple minutes to give these quick updates. So anyway, talking to Kelly Sorrell, I told her, hey, just so you know, kind of on the opposite of the authoritarian spectrum politically with Oath Keepers, although we share some sentiments. And they look at people like us and go, oh, come on, you're like us. You want smaller government. You're like,
No,
you don't get it, but that's okay.
Okay.
If you want to see us as allies,
I love everybody.
we're all
If you
allies.
can't
Why not?
stop.
Yeah. Well, this is why I take the view. For a lot of Oath Keepers would describe themselves as libertarian. I would call them moderate, unprincipled, sort of centrist, libertarian lean. I'd say
Yeah, but there's
libertarian,
so many- authoritarian.
exactly. They're libertarian leaning with genuine libertarian sentiment, but they're not actually libertarians. And
They
that's
need
where I'm
mushrooms.
also.
I think
But
they just need mushrooms.
This is why I like to actually use the term libertarian more inclusively, to say anybody who is conscientiously pulling us in the direction of more freedom and a better, more peaceful, harmonious society. We're all libertarians in that sense, and activists. So Ed has his arraignment Friday, and basically the next step in his legal process here is to hear an offer for a plea deal. And I think they're going to give him a sweet deal because they don't have a case. Now, here's why. Is Ed, I mean, it's tough for him to be in jail, as we made the case, we talked about, but he's a badass and he's hardcore. If he has a cause.
Been in the drunk tank, by the way. Like this is.
Yeah,
he
has no experience, and he's actually doing really well because it's not an overnight. He's already been locked up 13 days.
Yeah, 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's when you go from 0 to 2 weeks, having never done even an overnight in custody. That's kind of a big deal. But he is ready to fight this if it takes 2 years to trial, and 1 year is more likely. What I see is that the judge is rushing this. They're like, we're going to have we're sticking to the April trial date for the other 9 charges, and we're going to stick to a July 1st trial date, even though you have hours of footage to review and you defense attorneys just got assigned to this. We're going to see whatever. And there could be delays. But I think what they want, think about this from the political perspective. They're using the Democrats want checkmark victories that they can point to in November. What they don't want is a sweetheart like Ed Vallejo on the stand in his own fucking trial as the midterm elections are happening.
Hey, I didn't consider that.
That's what they will try to avoid. Ed, they don't realize this,
man.
but they kind of back themselves into a corner. As long as Ed is willing to say, fuck you, no plea, go to trial, because they don't have a case. It's very circumstantial, and it's their cases. They have to prove seditious conspiracy. They have to prove a certain amount of knowledge and intent, and the communications they have don't come anywhere near to that. They can bring the charge fairly. There's reasonable cause for suspicion. I'll grant them that.
Sure.
They have excuses to keep these people locked up. Like it's not out of the blue to lock up Ed. I mean, he is publicly said that he's armed, and he has said things that can be easily misinterpreted as threatening, even though we know them as expressions of self-defense under the non-aggression principle. But they don't have a case when it comes down to like reasonable doubt that Ed had foreknowledge and intent of seditious conspiracy. Full fucking shit.
Instead of just being an excited veteran,
yeah, no way,
passionate about his country and his cause.
No way,
they can't prove that.
No way.
No.
So they don't realize this, but Ed has got like the ultimate Trump card here. God damn it, did I say Trump? Tastes
that
funny in my
word's
mouth.
been hijacked by.
Yeah, I used to be able to use the word Trump and Trump card, and since even with Trump being big, until once he became president, you can't say that.
Card.
The word Trump has been like removed from the lexicon, unfortunately.
Thanks, Trump.
Yeah. So anyway, quick other updates. NOLA on the New Orleans case, the Charlotte ID case from the water stenciling there.
I didn't even know.
I've been waiting. There hasn't been, and that's the thing. It's basically that my attorney hit the wall with it, and just because he did, and there's no urgency to catch me up on it. We finally got to catch up today. Basically, they ruled against us, obviously, and in such a way that we have a big consolation prize, which is that one of the judges wrote a lengthy dissent in the case. So I think it was very much worth fighting this to raise the issue that shall ID is not a thing. It's a constitutional violation. For those of you who don't know, this goes back to a cop approaching us and demanding ID for me after determining that nothing illegal was happening because we were doing the water stenciling in New Orleans promoting the book bomb. So we lost, but it seems like it was a worthwhile loss, and it may be combined later with a Supreme Court appeal. But it's at the point where he doesn't even think it's really an eligible Supreme Court case. We don't. So it's so.
Oh well.
So a sort of worthwhile loss with a good consolation. That's the end of the New Orleans shot. Well, I mean, I did 3 days in jail in order to beat the charge so that we could do this. But that, by the way, that was a big setup for my Saguache County strategy. Like if I hadn't learned the dynamics that I did of the legal system there, I wouldn't have understood. I mean, I can't say I wouldn't have been as successful or wouldn't have done what I did. I was much more confident in staring down the government the way that I did in Saguache County, Colorado, because I'd had that experience in NOLA. Remember, part of that was me actually refusing to leave the jail. At one point, it was they told me charges have been dropped, you can go, and I said, "Fuck you, I'm not leaving until I have a piece of paper that says no charges."
Well, yeah.
And they said that we don't really do that, sir. It doesn't work that way. It does now. You're going to do it because I'm demanding it's my fucking right, and you want to make me cite cases, I will. But it doesn't matter because you know when it comes down to it, you don't get me that piece of paper, I'm going to hide under this bunk, and you're going to have to break my arm to get me out of here. And I did that, and they tried to pull me out from underneath my bunk and failed. They gave up, and then they actually did produce that piece of paper. So yeah, and then I made them put me in a wheelchair, wheel me to the uniform room, dump me on the floor, strip my oranges off, put my civilian clothes back on, pick me up, put me in the wheelchair, and dump me out on the sidewalk with my personal effects in my lap with that paper. That experience, even though it didn't quite come to that, I mean, there were little plays like that in the Saguache County story, but
you didn't give him a hard time like that, though.
I was ready to, though.
Yeah,
I was so ready.
I
don't even want to say what my last card was.
Well,
I'll tell people if you're listening, like if you're listening to this part of the podcast and you're waiting for our guests, what I was going to do was strip naked and curl into a ball.
You were in there naked
and say, well, I was naked at times. I had a t-shirt and my fleece-lined pants. If you're going to get arrested, fleece-lined pants. Highly recommend you roll them up and make a great pillow. But no, I would have, and I was naked most of the time I was in there. But I would have stripped naked and curled into a ball if I didn't want to leave. You say or if I was going to do that over my fucking truck and the dogs.
Yeah.
To be like,
they tortured the fucking dogs. You didn't even know if they were out or not.
Is it? I was going to say, like, is it worth? How much is it worth to you to not have to dump a naked veteran on the streets? Watch. Well, you're gonna pry me out from a naked ball
Bad luck.
and force dress me. Anyway, so with Saguache County, we got to do this and get to our guest. So with Saguache County, I called them today. Joey got to listen in. I called. Well, two of my points of contact. I'm not going to pursue the DA anymore.
The day before, you were brought up. Your case specifically was in the judiciary budget hearing
at the Colorado State Legislature.
Yes. Thank you, Autumn Brooks, for bringing that to my attention. An incredible cannabis activist in Colorado. But yeah, I'm not sure what was said, but
so that just it gives me like a real heartening encouragement to think there's another positive ripple effect of my case, getting Colorado state government's attention to be like, hey, you know how they decrimmed shrooms in Denver County and the sky didn't fall? We really need to do it statewide, or we're gonna have a bunch of Adam Kokeshes fucking with our small county governments. We got to give up this part of the drug war, and we'll do it slowly. But we can't let there be another Adam Kokesh case, because he basically shut down, or I didn't shut down the jail, but I made their jail operations very difficult for 12 days. By refusing to leave their drunk tank cell. They didn't have a drunk tank. So anyway, that's it for updates. Let's get to our guest.
She's requesting 3 minutes.
Oh, now she's. Oh, okay. Well, Dolores, excuse us for holding you late to get started.
No. She is. Yeah.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, Dolores Montgomery Halbin is our guest tonight, and she has a truly tragic drug war story. She is a 66-year-old cannabis activist, retired registered nurse, mother of 3, grandmother of 6, widowed after 40 years of marriage to the love of her life, Gene Halbin. And they were together held in Bates County Jail. And this is for his small cannabis garden, a basement cannabis garden. And this is for treating his glaucoma, but he succumbed to illness while he was locked up. And this is something that, I mean, is really important right now, because there's still so many people suffering, even in states where cannabis is full legal. It is, and cannabis arrests, are still at an atrocious level. I mean, we saw that when we thought they were going down with the drug war, they were actually level, and they had just shifted targets basically. And it's important that we remember stories like this and the cost of the drug war. While we get to smoke on the internet now, and it's cool, and it's not that big a deal. They went to jail in 2014, so 8 years ago. There are people who are locked up still on sentences for nothing but cannabis that that were longer than 8 years, going back further than that.
There's still some lifers,
and we need to remember. And GI Mary Jane does such a great job with this, with Platoon 420, remembering victims of the drug war. Dolores writes for Evolution Magazine, Missouri medical marijuana publication, and we might debate some of the words, but she is attributed with the quote, "The only reform that matters now is federal reform. The war on drugs won't end until the federal government ends it." Now, Dolores, I'm going to say, let's do this from the ground up and nullify and civil disobedience, so they're forced to back down. But you're right. You're right in pointing out that, yes, the federal government is the sort of crux of the battle now. So, Dolores, welcome to the show. Thank you for your work and for sharing your story.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I appreciate it very much. I've been fascinated as the old lady here in your conversation. And this whole last few weeks has been like like what happened with us in 2014 was insane. And it was like what happens to, I used to know the statistics, somebody might, the number of people of being turned in by former friends and family in a dispute. And it makes cannabis patients very vulnerable, because if anybody in the neighborhood gets pissed off and they happen to like you, they can call you in and hurt everyone around you. And that was our situation, a child custody battle, and it worked brilliantly. And but to no good end, never to any good end. But Missouri, it took an insane number of years, and the industry here just out there in what's the mountain? Murder Mountain. Look nice. It's been a struggle for me because I spent 6 years just crossing the state, and dragging my husband when he was still alive, which was not long. And what they $10 billion last year generated in the cannabis industry. 10 B with a billion, 10 billion generated in the country. And
Wait, are you trying to say that people like to smoke weed?
You think? So, like, I started asking myself, has it been worth it? Like, have I just been going across the country, telling my sad story about how, the love of my life died in my arms over a plant so that people can get rich? So, in an effort to understand this, and I'm glad earlier you brought up books, because a very interesting author, Sebastian Junger, veterans, you guys might know him by Tribe. Tribe is a book that is about veterans. He wasn't a veteran. He was just he'd go over there and talk to guys because he wanted to write about it. And this is his new book, Freedom, which got horrible reviews because he's kind of all over the place in it. A lot of people may know him for The Perfect Storm, which George Clooney didn't have that, right? So as I've been trying to write my March Evolution article about, my first question I started asking people was, how will you feel when you wake up to the headlines, prohibition has ended, marijuana? And oddly enough, Joey, this all started with something that you said when you contacted me the first time, and you commented on my resiliency. And I'm like, oh, fuck no, I'm not resilient. I'm angry. I'm really, really angry. They took my man. I'm too old to look for another one. I had a really good one. I wanted to keep him. I'm fueled by anger. And my fear is that when the last prisoner's out of prison, I might get unangry, but I don't think so. I will be relieved. And I talked to Joe Grumbine with Human Solutions about this. I said, how will you feel? Because Joe's got skin in the game. He's been to jail a lot. And he said, well, relieved, like when a festered splinter gets pulled out of your foot, I talked to Christina Frommer, founder of the Canna Convict Project, co-founder here in Missouri, an organization I work with. We just got our 6th guy out yesterday, Zach Nunn. Yay, 6.5 years. So far, we've shaved 40 years off of cannabis prisoners' sentence with our little teeny tiny weeny grassroots organization. Anyway, I asked Christina how she'll feel. She goes, absolute elation. And she goes, but there'll be so much mourning. So much mourning.
Like the end of a war.
Right. Because, at the end of World War II, it kind of had to happen. Hitler had to be stopped. But this was like Vietnam. This was a useless.
Yeah, there's no right. You have to accept.
No production, nothing but over $1 trillion in tax dollars. So anyway, I want to share something with you after listening to you.
Wait,
guys.
We're supposed to compare it to Afghanistan now.
Well, I'm Vietnam. So listen to this. So Sebastian Junger's first book is a book called Tribe. he wanted to know about how veterans that came back from Afghanistan managed. And so he stuck his thumb out when he graduated from college and hitchhiked across the country and sought out veterans. And in Tribe, he sorts it out. In Freedom, he takes off. This is his last book, this little one here. And he goes with his two friends that are Iraqi veterans and one of the photographers, an Iraqi conflict photographer. And he goes on the railroad tracks from Washington, D.C. to Pennsylvania. And I get it entirely. I heard him interviewed on NPR, and they kind of like, well, you've gone from Genghis Khan to the slave trade. But I get it. And here's why I get it. Because of Tribe, his first book. And I want to read you a quote. And this is in context to everything I've been listening to you guys say since the show started here with the short John over to talk to Joe. Tribal society sustains human life, while modern society threatens the viability of what matters the most to humanity, the soul.
Yeah.
We are tribal. Kansas City is a city that was an integrated city until the 1920s, when the two richest people in the city, an old and a young, Nelson of the Nelson Art Gallery here and Nichols of the J.C. Nichols Plaza, got together and formed the City Beautiful, which was to turn the plaza into the plaza. And if you've never been here, the plaza is beautiful. We have more fountains than Paris. But to do that, they used deeds to exclude Black people and Jewish people. They didn't go to the extent that Hitler did, but nobody could get a mortgage in that neighborhood. Our Attorney General in 2020, he sued the city of Crestview, which is on the borderline between the white and Black, it's very segregated city. And a woman in Crestview that was Black found two statutes still in the city ordinances, still there, saying that Negro people could not get deeds on property in Crestview.
Wow.
So these are racist. We have the whole plaza is named after J.C. Nichols and the Nelson Art Gallery. And these are just, they're horrible racists. They are responsible for taking our city and separating it out. And in order to survive, the Black community had to form a tribe. They had to become tribal. Right. I was a school nurse down there for 6 years, from 1999 to 2005. My school was 90% Black. And it means, that we had like 4 white kids and brown, a lot of Muslim kids. 21% of our kids had 2 parents.
Wow.
36% of our kids had a parent. The rest of them had no parents.
Oh.
Their parents were in prison for low level.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Oh no, maybe it's her. We're good.
I'm going to assume low-level drug offenses is where she was going with that. Oh,
she's back.
Lord, you're back.
I was just going to say, speaking of Afghanistan, I don't know if you guys heard this in the news recently, but Biden just warned Russia that if they invade Ukraine, America will evacuate haphazardly and leave $86 billion in weapons behind. It's a great threat. But anyway, no, so Dolores, can you hear us okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you'll let me do this as the interviewer here, and feel free to totally resist me and go somewhere else. I do want to bring it back to the idea of modern society as a challenge to the human soul, right? And how that relates to your activism. But first,
and yours as well.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Well, at first, or one of the questions you asked, sort of rhetorically, was, is it worth it? And it's not just the price that you've paid. But I want to, Joey, and for people who live in Missouri, do they tell them that they're allowed to move? They know that there are like other places they're allowed to live, right? You didn't.
Some people don't.
Was it worth it?
Programming. Some people think they can't leave their home.
So, if you can comment on this briefly, though, seriously, in terms of voting with your feet, what is your attachment to Missouri? And does that feel like being on the front lines of the drug war, or a war?
It was. It absolutely
war that you pull yourself away from, and pulling yourself away and pulling your support out of it, right?
No, we have an army here. By my husband died in 2015. I went on trial in 2016. We had a really good petition on the ballot in 2016, and the money people trashed it. I mean, it was a pure, utter sabotage, which left me devastated, along with a lot of other people, and ready to leave the state. But we hunkered down. We did it again, and in 2018 it passed. And it's funny because the night it passed, it's okay. I mean, if you follow the rules, you can have we've got a lot of dispensaries popping up. There's 2 legalization petitions circulating now for 2022. And I don't know which one will get on the ballot, or if either one of them will get enough signatures. Are you aware of the Koch brothers coming on board?
Of course.
Yeah, Jesus Christ. So I just found out about that today. That came out in Forbes yesterday, that the David Koch Foundation of has joined forces with Jeff Bezos and committed to millions of dollars in lobbying money to bring about South Carolina Nancy Mace's state something bill. Are you familiar?
No.
Basically, it takes it off the schedule and tells the states to do whatever the hell they want.
I like that. I like that.
So, of all things, like the first time Gene and I ever talked about this publicly after we got busted was at the law committee in 2014 in Missouri. And one of the senators asked me when I was testifying, he goes, well, if it's so great, why is it still illegal? And funny thing is, I Googled that at 2:00 in the morning. Why is marijuana still illegal? First thing that popped up was the Koch brothers. Second thing was ALEC and private prisons, of course. And now the Koch Foundation has said enough. I would not go so far as to say they have admitted to doing wrong, as to they have realized the money involved. The United States sold $10 trillion in cannabis last year. That's a lot of money. It's getting laundered through. I mean, what a money. I've been watching The Blacklist. What a money laundering opportunity cannabis has provided. It's insane. And no banking laws. I mean, it's just been the wild, wild west. So the Koch brothers, they're out there. They're reeling it in. And the whole landscape's going to change here. But I don't know what it's going to look like.
Well, I want to ask you about the anger, though.
Yeah.
Politics is boring. Huh?
What's that?
To me, policy's boring at this point. Someone else can handle the paperwork. I'll just be here doing mushrooms. But in terms of the federal law and all that, I want to talk about what you said about being motivated by anger next, because you mentioned that before, and you just listed trillions of reasons to be angry. And you could. Your story is such a poignant individual case of injustice. But, it's like, one death is a tragedy and a million is a statistic. And in terms of how many people's lives have been ruined, or how many people have had their health negatively impacted or lost their lives in the name of cannabis prohibition, yeah, easily in the millions.
Oh, so I know 4 guys since my husband died that have died in jail. I mean, it's Bureau of Prisons is up 49% last year's. Fatalities are up 49%. That came out on Saturday. 49% more guys died last year. Get them out. Get them the fuck. Get them out. The First Step Act has helped. No, I'm furious. My favorite movie line ever is Terminator 3, when Arnie's driving them and she's all pissed off. He says, "Are you mad?" And she said, "Yes." And he goes, "Good. Anger is a more useful emotion than despair." You know?
Okay. So despair
Totally
versus
motivated.
anger.
Yeah.
But now you got to compare to love. And I got to say, if you have, from what I know of how much time you have put into this cause, even if it feels like anger most of the time, that anger has to be out of a sense of injustice against something that you love or someone that
I lost my man. I lost my man.
But obviously you're not in despair. You're expressing some greater love through your activism than anything you felt for him, because you've stayed at it, because you don't want to see anybody else victimized that he was, right?
No, nobody should lose their split apart like this. It's wrong. And it keeps happening. I mean, if it stopped with me, it would have been great. But it didn't. I mean, Stacy, the girls in Bleeding Kansas, Stacy Swan, she loves you. We did court support for Jennifer Hess 2 years ago. I mean, Homer, her husband died on the jailhouse cell with them making fucking fun of him, you know? He was a big man and he couldn't breathe and they were laughing at him, you know? And that happens every damn day. And it happened 49% more every damn day last year than it has before. So yeah, there's an urgency. This is a life and death situation. I don't know how Lance Gore is doing. Last I heard, he has COVID. I mean, we got nice, sweet kids in here that are just dying. And I had a kid in Pop prison for 44 months, man. I get that part of it too entirely. I stood in the line.
It's educated people who know what's up, who think I'm fucking insane for voluntarily spending time locked up.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I get that. And I learned what you were talking about. While I was in jail, I put my journalist hat on. And I was with, I spent a total of my time, I was with 22 women altogether. I called them my Jesus women. They took my husband and stuck him in a cell, a single cell that already had a guy in it, and gave him a mat and threw it on the floor. And that was it for the girls' general population. But I'm in there, and I mean, these girls are amazing. There was one person that was in there for embezzling. Everyone else was in there for little bitty bits of meth, like seeded. They would go through the drug task force and they'd seed the town, you know. Then they'd scoop these women up, and the DEA guys that picked me up, Talley and Perryman, they're like dealing drugs with the not the prosecutor, the other guy in Nevada, in Vernon County, the district attorney, whatever. Anyway, so they catch her with 3 pounds of meth in her house and nothing happens. Well, you know, it's kind of like that Suicide Kings movie, you know, the word on the street. You can trust the word on the street. You can always trust the word on the street. So Monday morning comes and somebody's put some money on my book and I'm able to call my son. And first time I've talked to anybody in 5 days, and I'm on the jail phone going, yeah, and they're dealing meth out of here and, and naming names and, telling them the whole fucking story. 3 hours later, the door opens, they go, Halvin. And I'm like, somebody come up with 50 grand to get us out. I mean, I know we've been on the radio, on the news around the world. And I go out there and there's the cop standing there with a set of handcuffs. And he goes, put your hands out in front of you. And I go, where are you taking me? He goes, I'm transferring you to Vernon County. I said, why? He goes, well, we're overcrowded. Well, I don't think so, because there's 10 bunks and 7 girls. We got 3 empty bunks in here. And he goes, well, here's the deal. You either hold your hands out and I handcuff you, or I tase you and handcuff you. You piss all over yourself and I throw you in the back of the truck or the van. Now, if you behave yourself, I'll put these handcuffs on you and I'll let you ride up front.
That's so
I'm
disgusting.
hyperventilating, and they have moved my husband to the cell so he can watch this. And that's the day he had his heart attack in jail. Seeing me get handcuffed, hauled out of there. So, they give you those 45-second phone calls, right? To anybody. And I got a cousin in the FBI. So the minute I got to Vernon County, I'm on the phone. Like, Allie, if I disappear, call cousin Nancy Taylor at the FBI. Yep. Tell her to come find me. I think they're going to try to kill me, I was scared fucking shitless. But there were 14 girls in that cell with 10.
I'm allowed to laugh because I know what that feels like.
Only do that if you've been to jail. For me, it was an experience that taught me, I'm sorry it killed my husband. That sucked. It taught me a lot. It killed him. But these next round of girls, there were 10 beds, 14 girls. I was number 14. So they gave me a mat on the floor. And we're overcrowded. Okay. And they were not having, by that time, word had gotten out, and they were calling me Granny Ganja. Stories, on the street, people know. And they made me take a bed, and they shared their bathroom coffee with me, and took me under their wing, and just treated me like I was their own grandmother. It was, and I listened to their stories, and God, there was a gal in there that had been waiting 18 months for sentencing on something that she was probably going to get 90 days on. Never seen the light of day. And it's just this mill. It's not just cannabis, but it's meth. And it's just this mill of people. It's like a people mill. Yeah. And it's a self-sustaining industry. But I am telling you, it is non-sustainable. This is non-sustainable. It has to collapse. It's
from that.
This is where I want to, Dolores, I want to wrap up with a giant softball question for you. To bring it back to the modern society's destruction of the human soul. And it's, I'm not, I don't want to speak to necessarily my individual experiences, but the broader social experience of being denied access to cannabis is the big one. But it's psilocybin, it's the whole variety of naturally occurring psychoactive drugs that our brains are designed to use to live better, to have more conscious control over our brains, moods, attitudes, outlook, our health in general, not to mention all of the just basic sort of clinical health benefits of cannabis for glaucoma and cancer and COVID, even at this point, as that's my favorite of all of our I told you so's. We were saying from the beginning, don't forget to smoke your COVID vitamins.
Smoke your COVID.
We were saying that 2 years ago. But anyway, it seems that there is an undeniable awareness now, because cannabis is so legal that it's not even fun to smoke anymore. But that there's a growing awareness that just in the drug war, something has been kept from us. Something of the human experience has been stolen from us. Not just, we get to do drugs and party, we get to do drugs and cure cancer as opposed to be hooked to pharmaceuticals. It is a restoration of the human soul, is it not? And how do you see your work in being satisfying and rewarding because it is contributing to the restoration of the human soul.
Have you ever heard of there's a CBS special you guys got to watch. It's about ants. Guy named Moffat, he's a scientist that specializes in ants. So you can just Google it, and you guys need to watch this because I think it would really help you to understand what you're up against. Ants are very efficient, but absolutely stupid. Ants follow the biggest, fattest, the guy with the biggest ass, the guy with the smelliest ass, and the guy with the biggest feet, because that's the guy that makes the biggest trail, and they follow. They never look right and they never look left. They just follow. And in that following, there is this efficiency. And to me, that's the modern society. It's the white Protestant, Anglo-Saxon, no Jews, no blacks, no anybody that doesn't look exactly like me. I'm going to follow my aunt. And our job as activists is to create collaterals. Before I was retired by my charges, I was a cardiac critical care nurse. And the major arteries in your heart can be 99% blocked, but you will develop little collateral heart circulation around those that will keep you alive till open heart surgery. It's temporary, but it works. That's what we are. We're the collaterals that are keeping those guys in prison alive. We're keeping the awareness. We're making sure that people know they're there. We are their tribe. We're not the modern society. We will never be the modern society. And the modern society is never going to give a rat's fucking ass about us. They're just not capable of it. Our job as a tribe is to keep each other, watch each other's backs. And what we do is, even when those assholes in the modern society get in trouble, we're there for them because we don't judge. That's our job. It's just our job. It's what we do. And that is my only, and it's been a struggle. I mean, I've been struggling with this on a really intense level since I got busted again. And I had to come out as an active activist again. It can cause everything in me from just an emotional hangover to an absolute meltdown, PTSD, dreams. Last night, like yesterday, we had a prison release that I went to. And last night I dreamed my husband came home and he'd just been away at jail and I had him back, and that's the cost. That's what it cost me to talk about it, is the dreams. And I've got him back for a minute, and then I wake up to the reality. And the cost to me of activism is my heart, which is already just stuck together with scar tissue. But the only recompense I can come up with in the whole thing, the only healing that I get, is if it's someday I'm able to see some family that has been able to stay whole and heal with cannabis without the threat of death, without the death penalty looming. We're not there yet. We got to get the rest of our guys out. And I hate the fucking industry. People that I owe an apology to the Kansas Chamber of Commerce, Kansas Cannabis Chamber of Commerce lady, because I got pissy with her on her website. But, how about we get everybody out of jail before we start making money? And her comment back was that activism and industry are not mutually exclusive, that both have their part to play. Yeah. And I'm like, you fucking bitch, And then I picked up Tribe and I picked up Freedom. And I went back to the modern society and the understanding that, and then I read the article in Forbes about the Koch brothers being on board. And I'm like, it can't happen any other way. It cannot. This kind of 85-year war is not, Henry Ford was a powerful guy. George Slickton was powerful. They were powerful and they couldn't fight this when it happened. You know, Jeff Bezos has been sending lobbyists to DC for a year now, and they're like, you know, he's getting ignored, which he takes real personally. But the Koch brothers, the most conservative Republican group in the United States, they will not be ignored. They will not be ignored.
Yeah.
And they are committed to
Yeah.
this. And therefore, it will happen. And so now I can go back to, again, asking people like you and myself and Joe and other people that have really been burned by this, how will we feel when the Koch brothers accomplish that goal? And I mean, you saw how Afghanistan ended. It wasn't because we won. It wasn't as
Oh, we lose her again for a second.
No.
All right. Well, if she can hear me, I'm just gonna. Oh, there she
anyway,
is.
we
Please.
watched Saigon fall. And we didn't win that war. You know, it ended. It didn't end because I protested with my husband every weekend for 5 or 6 years. It ended because we lost it. My parents became members of the Underground Railroad, smuggling refugees out of Guatemala. That ended because Ollie North got busted with his cocaine and weapons scam. You know, this will end because the Koch brothers are on board. Still doesn't mean that we wasted our time.
Yeah, but we've come to that turning point where the bigger economic forces are lining up with the compassionate positions. I really appreciate you sharing the depth of the impact of your story. Dolores, you write for Evolution Magazine. That is evolution-mag, M-A-G, evolution-mag.com. Is there anything else you want to point people to connect with you online?
No, not at all. I'm on Facebook and Evolution. I mean, you can read my articles online, but we don't have the staff to manage comments. We're kind of lazy in that way, you know. But it's a great magazine. You can call and subscribe. I really would encourage your people to take your advice and read. Everyone needs to have read Jack Herer's book, The Emperor Wears No Clothes. If you have not, read this book. It's ridiculous on eBay. It's the one time I'll tell you to go on Amazon because Jeff Bezos sells it for $39.99. Pick up Sebastian Younger's Freedom and the book before that, Tribe. It will help you understand what we're up against and why we do what we do. I promise books are worth reading. So reading
also, you can start with watching the NBC special on ants. I have that.
And check out the ants. We need to understand how society works if we're going to change it. And if we're ever going to have a viable third party, we need to understand the ants seriously. And
so Dolores, how homework study list. I love it. 2 books.
Hey, and a special. I will always give you homework.
I love it. Thank you so much, dear. Appreciate you joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me. Keep up the good work. Keep fighting the big fight. It's worth it in the long run.
Right back at you. All right, just to wrap things up tonight, we didn't actually say the number of Americans who have been vaccinated. I have the Google. If you put into Google how many Americans have been vaccinated, you get this giant data output. But here's the thing: even with their bullshit numbers, this is, if anything, this is exaggerated. They're saying it's only 63.7% of the population fully vaccinated.
Oh, but
that means
we've beaten the halfway mark.
Well, yeah, right. When we started covering this, not that long ago, like a few months ago, it kind of hovered. It's crept up from 50%. It went to 50% pretty quick. It was kind of an S curve of adoption. But a lot of people who've gotten it have regretted it and said, we're not going to get boosters, or we shouldn't have gotten this in the first place, or I only got it because of my job and they said it was safe. Well, they said it was effective. You think they're lying about saying it was safe too? Yeah. Yeah. All right. Any other announcements here? Anything we got to do before producer's notes? Smoke weed every day
We
one
need
more
to smoke
time.
some weed every day.
Every day. We take our COVID vitamins.
Every day. Smoke weed every day. Smoke weed every day.
Hit him with the links. Tim's like, how did I not think of that mustache trick before Adam? Smoke rings are cooler though.
Smoke rings are fun.
Too. It'd be really cool if my mustache was shaped in such a way that like blowing through it made smoke rings, but I don't think that's really
You
possible.
can do that one day. Everybody give you something.
All right, Jim, hit him with the links or we're saying goodnight. Was he still smoking?
No, I think we
he
we
muted?
just don't have audio.
Muted like an idiot. I was saying my beard is long enough to do this and blow the smoke through the whole beard.
I can do it too.
Yeah.
Barely.
Well, that's funner.
There, no, I can get my chin beard to go all the way to the top of my mustache.
Yeah, that's definitely. I think my strategy was I would fight my beard, constantly eating your beard. That's what makes it grow longer. So try that. Just kidding. Yep, there you go. Perfect. I love it. There you go. See, that's how you roll. Yep, that filters the smoke to keep it there, and then yeah, perfect. T.me/Adam versus Man. Get yourself connected. Become like pretty soon we're gonna have like the 1,000th subscriber. We might have to do something for that, so that'd be pretty cool. Patreon.com/Adam versus Man. Financially support the show that way. HomefrontBattleBuddies.org. Theft deductible donations can be sent there. So definitely get yourself connected. Oh, and one more thing I didn't mention earlier I wanted to bring up. Definitely get yourself connected to the Odyssey channel. We talk about it every day, and that's the new YouTube, basically. ODYSEE @ Adam Kokesh. Easiest thing you ever did. Join the family over there at Odyssey where you can say what the fuck you want, not have to worry about it.
Yeah, we're almost at we're hitting that 1,000 mark on Odyssey too. So keep them coming.
Yeah, it's a slow rebuild. 577 subscribers on Odyssey. That is not insignificant, but after YouTube and censorship and everything else, we're kind of rebuilding from scratch, and that's okay. But yeah, getting close to 1,000 on the channel. I think that's kind of a critical mass point for Telegram. But yeah, it's hard to rebuild with the. I mean, we used to have staff and shit for this show.
Yeah.
Now it's just the three of us volunteers, and then one of us went to federal prison, and isn't here. Our ombudsman is locked up right now. So pour one out for Ed. Well, he's a recovering alcoholic. That's 40 years. So I'll say one extra hit for Ed. All right, with that, thanks everybody for a fun show. I hope you enjoyed as much as I did. Mwah. Peace and love, y'all. Choose happiness and be excellent to each other.